Hey everybody, I wanted to share with you today two of my favorite pickled onions recipes. I see a lot of pickled onions recipes on YouTube, and I just wanted to throw these into your collection. They are a good variation on probably what you already have going. So these are two very different styles of cooking. Both of these I keep on hand all the time. One is pickled red onions with sumac, and the other is a spicy Cajun white or yellow onion pickle. And they're quick pickles. They're not something that I use a canner and put up. They just stay in the refrigerator. The first recipe is the sumac red onions. And this came about because I'd bought some sumac for a Middle Eastern recipe and used like a teaspoon of it, and it sat in my pantry staring at me. So I found this recipe to be a really good way to use up that spice. And I know what you're thinking is what I thought first as well. Hey, isn't that poisonous? But no, it's not poisonous sumac. It is a really tart, acidic seasoning that is commonly used with lamb and in Middle Eastern recipes. So I highly encourage you to try this recipe. It's also a really great way to brighten up your red onion pickles. The second recipe is one that I grew up with. We used to eat it with fried catfish and hush puppies, and they are pickled yellow onions. And they also go really well with red beans and rice. So that was something that was kind of like not in the dish, but served in like a little side dish that came out to the table in a restaurant with your fried catfish platter or your fried shrimp platter, or a side bowl next to your red beans and rice. And so that one is a little spicy. You can adjust it to your taste. You don't really need any special tools for this. A mandolin makes it a little faster and more consistent. I have a small household, so if I have like half of a red onion left over, this is what I do with it. But I'll show you the recipe that I use for a half a red onion, and then you can scale it up, double it. It's a very simple recipe. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I slice the onion. Like I said, normally I make this recipe with half an onion that I have left over from whatever I was cooking. Okay, and if you want to see, the onion slices are about a quarter of an inch thick. This is the sumac that I use, not poisonous. And you'll want 2 teaspoons of this in the jar that you're going to use. So I use these wide mouth mason jars. This is enough for half a red onion to keep in the fridge, and they're small enough that they fit in the fridge. So we will add the sumac and the vinegar to the jar, stir that up, and then add the onions in, kind of shake it up, and that's it. So I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of the sumac. And I'm going to use 4 teaspoons, which is a tablespoon and a teaspoon of the apple cider vinegar. It does not have to be organic, that's just what I buy. Okay, now that the hardest part is done, so now I'm just going to put the onions in and shake it up. And it will need to sit in the fridge so that they will soften a bit, and then they will also absorb all that flavor. You can use other vinegars. Apple cider, I feel like, goes the best with this one. And if you're used to having pickled red onions that are like soaked in vinegar, this is not that recipe, but you will start to see some of the liquid pull out in the bottom over time. But just this is all you really need, and this is going to go in the fridge. Okay, the next piece is the spicy Cajun white onions. So typically this recipe traditionally is made with pearl onions, which are about an inch in diameter. They're a little hard to find fresh. I see them frozen and they're kind of soggy, and I don't really like that. So if I can't find them, then any small like yellow onion or white onion would be sufficient. I think the yellow onions are a little better. I could only find white that weren't like gigantic at the store. So I'm going to use white onions. This is best done with a soak overnight. And so I'll show you that, but then we'll just cut straight over to the canning procedure. So the ingredients on this one are the onions, crushed red peppers, like your pizza topping peppers, a couple of bay leaves dried, and then a couple of leaves of fresh basil. If you can't find fresh basil, then get freshly dried basil. In that meaning that it has not been sitting in your pantry for a year and a half as dried basil. So if you can get fresh, that's great. I have this growing all the time. And then this goes in just plain white vinegar. I can a lot, so I have this giant jug. You can also buy smaller things. And then the key ingredient that makes this Cajun is the shrimp and crab boil concentrated. Okay, so see where it says concentrated right there. Make sure you get that one. This company also makes these in like a dry powder sachet that you can you like throw in your crab boil. It's delicious, but I think that this is better because it goes into solution better in this preparation. And this is just something I have on hand all the time. I'll put a link down below, so if it's not in your area, then you can order it online. But it's concentrated shrimp and crab boil. It's also really good to put in your boiled shrimp. Okay, so what we want to do first is peel and slice our onions. This is not going to be as fine of a slice as the red onion recipe was. It's going to be about 3/4 to an inch wide strips. And then we're going to soak it in like a water bath overnight, 8 hours-ish. With that, it just kind of draws out some of that harshness, and you'll discard that soaking water the next day. With your soaking vessel, you don't want to use metal. You can use plastic or glass. I just use these 2-liter tubs from the restaurant supply store. And so I'm just going to do 3 whole onions. And so this recipe, it can be scaled up or down. You just want to keep the vinegar to water ratio as close to 3 to 1 as you can get it. Just because onions are different in everybody's area, this is about a pound of onions. Okay, so I'm gonna peel these first and try not to cry, and then slice them. So if you can see, I have all 3 onions halved. I did leave them kind of connected here at the tip. And that's really just my preference. It's kind of how it was served. It also helps keep them together. So when you serve them, you get a full piece and not just a bunch of shreds. For these to fit down in the jars, though, I do prefer to cut them down into thirds or quarters of each half, and I'll show you that. But I do leave them connected so they'll kind of stay together throughout the whole process as a whole piece. So kind of like that. We're just going to cover these with water, plastic bowl water. So you can see this is full of water here, and these are just going to soak overnight, and that just kind of helps take that edge off, that real pungent onion edge off of it, and kind of softens the flavor. I'm sure there's some like internet, YouTube guys out there that can tell you every molecule of the science of this, and that's already out there, so I'm not going to repeat that. The next thing I'm going to do is prepare my jars. I usually put 1 bay leaf in each jar, 1 basil leaf in each jar, and then some red pepper flakes in each jar. And that kind of works out to be like a pretty spicy onion. So the strategy with canning stuff in general is you put your spices kind of in first, and then you put your thing in there that you pickle in, and then you pour the liquid over the top. You don't want to go past about right here typically, and you want to make sure that you put enough stuff in there that your onions don't float to the top. So kind of pack them in tight. They will soften over time. And this recipe really is best when it's been in the fridge for a week. So it's not as quick of a pickle as the red onion ones. So the way it works out, honestly, is the larger jar is gonna be less concentrated with flavor if I put the same amounts in both of these, right? So I usually pick like a bigger bay leaf for the big jar, maybe a half or a smaller one in the smaller jar. So 1 in each. And then I just put 1 basil leaf in each jar. And then 2 teaspoons of pepper for this recipe. And this is just your bulk red, crushed red pepper, like the pizza topping. And we'll put about, I would say about a half a teaspoon in the small jar, about a teaspoon and a half in the big jar, because it's gonna be less concentrated. So you can adjust that spiciness however you prefer. So that's our dry spices, and then now we want to get the onions down in the jars. You don't want them to float up, so make sure you get them down in there pre-packed. This right here is why I like the wide mouth jars better, so I have more control over putting them in. But try to not break apart the onions as you're putting them in. See, these wide mouth jars are so much easier to get the onions in, especially if you have big hands. I have tiny hands. So for the liquid part, we have our onions in there pretty stuffed. And you wanna, they will sometimes come up and float to the top, so I just try to make sure they're stuffed down in there. So this is vinegar. This is 2 cups of vinegar, 16 ounces. Okay, and I have about 2/3 of a cup, just over 5 ounces of water. I just used tap water. I'm in Austin. For what we pay to live here, the water better be good and clean. But if you live somewhere that has kind of fishy water or not pleasant water, then you can use distilled water. But I just use tap water. So I'm gonna pour that in here as well. And then you want a tablespoon of the crab oil. Okay, and I'm just gonna stir that. And if we have to make another batch, so be it. This may be enough. And I'm just gonna ladle this in to okay. So you can kind of see how they stick up a little bit. They will go down, and you can see all this stuff in here. So this is going to go in the fridge for about a week. I would say 5 days minimum. You do want to give them time for the spices to mix. You don't have to shake them, you don't have to baby them or anything. They just go straight in the fridge, and everything in solution is going to get in the onions. Turned out pretty close. I hope this video has been helpful. This is one of my favorite things to add on to the side of a dish. This will really elevate any dish that just needs that little bit of extra punch and acidity. And they're really easy to make, really easy to just keep on hand in the fridge. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my videos.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed these videos.